This idea of adoption changed my life and changed my perspective of the way I view myself, the way I view my role, my identity. When I step in front of God, it changed the way that I viewed our relationship. And it all changed whenever I received this picture in an email in December of 2015. In December of 2015, this little guy changed my life and the way I view God forever. A few years earlier, before this, my wife and I decided to explore the idea of adoption. It's something that she wanted to do because she just loves kids. She's a compassionate woman. And it's something I wanted to do because after having 2 girls, I realized, I don't know if I can create a male. And so I'm like, you know what? I'll go on this journey, but we're adopting a son. And so she agreed with that. And so we went on this journey of adoption together, and I want you to know it was a hard journey. It was a really hard journey. Our family had to make a ton of sacrifices. We made sacrifices financially, big time. We made sacrifices with our medical, with our relationships, legal sacrifices, but they were all sacrifices that we were willing to make in order to change a kid's life. And then this picture was sent to us. It was of an 18-month-old boy living in a foster home in Bulgaria. And his name was Bojidar Anev Shalamanov. And so our immediate question was, okay, that's his name, but who is he? Like, who? We've never seen this kid before. Right now, he's just a picture and email to us. Who is he? We didn't know who he was, but here's what we kind of knew about him. That he was being put up for adoption. That somewhere along the way, somebody did not find a value in keeping him. And what we go on to find out is that one of the reasons they didn't want to keep him is because his mother had a bad reputation and his mother couldn't take care of him. His father was unknown, and nobody in the city, nobody in the country wanted to adopt a perfectly healthy 18-month-old boy because not only was he Bulgarian, but he was of the lower class variety of Bulgarians. He was Roma or Gypsy, and nobody saw any value in anybody who was Roma or Gypsy. And so ultimately what the adoption agencies want to do is to adopt kids and keep them in country. But when nobody in country wants them, they slate them for international adoption. And so we get this email asking us if we would consider finding out who this boy is. So who is he? We decided to go find out. So we hopped on a plane, and 4 weeks later, we were on a plane flying to Bulgaria in this small town in the middle of an ex-communist country, and after hours of flying, and then hours of driving, our translator and our driver, they pull us up to this old-looking concrete building, this family services building. And we pull the car up, and he begins to walk to the door. And we realize for the first time, we're about ready to meet Bojidar Anev Shalamanov. And my heart was pounding. I'm like, man, God, I don't know who this kid is. And I don't know what I'm going to feel when I meet this kid because he's not like my daughters. My daughters are my blood. And so we start walking, and then this is what happens next.
From my mother's womb, you have chosen me. Love has called my name. I've been born again to a family. Your blood flows through my veins. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child.
Our trip ended with the Bulgarian government asking us if we wanted this kid. So I walk in that room and I meet this kid who I've never seen before. He walks up to us. We get a few days of just playing with him and hanging out with him. And immediately, we understood something about him. His value is so much more than what people realize. And so they ended the trip by saying, You can go home and fly back to America and take a few weeks and decide if you want to pursue adopting this kid. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, go home and decide? And like, do we want this kid? Of course we want this kid. Like, why would anybody not want this kid? Basically what they were saying to us is, do you see any value in this kid? And I'm like, you need to know something about him that I know about him, even though I just met him. This kid was created in the image of God, and he is not defined by what's inside of him or by what he offers society. Of course we want this kid. And so, we did. We adopted this kid. And 6.5 months later, after fulfilling all of the many requirements of the law, Bojidar Anev Shalamanov became our son. This little guy. He became our son. And it was the best decision that we could ever make. And one of the joys of this whole process was not only bringing him home, but reading the court decree, the document, the Bulgarian document that made him our son. And when I read it, it sounds a lot like Romans chapter 8 to me. And this is what it said. It says this: the court finds that the requirements of the law have been met. Based on the above arguments, the court grants full adoption of the child, Bojidar Anev Shalamanov, to Nokomis and Rachel Perez. The adopted child and his descendants shall be guaranteed by rights and obligations as those existing between relatives of origin. The court orders a new record of birth, that it shall be executed for this child, wherein the adoptive parents shall be entered as his parents. And the child shall take the name Ben Bojidar Perez. So who is he? Well, he's going to be answering that question for the rest of his life. Because his new name, Ben Bojidar, means my son is a gift of God. And the reason we named that is not because we just like the name Ben, is because Ben means my son. And I want every time someone asks them, who are you? Him to say, my name's Ben. Because every time he says that, I want him to understand something about himself. That he's so much more than his skin color. He's so much more than those temptations that are inevitably going to control inside of him. He's so much more than the role that he plays in society. I don't even care what he does in this world. I want him to know, no matter whether he fails or succeeds, that it doesn't matter, because he's Ben Bojidar. He's my son, whom I love and whom I'm well pleased, before he does anything. The reason we named him that is because it's true. Not only is my son, but he's God's son. And he's a gift of God. He has value. He has the Imago Dei deeply woven inside of him. And I want him to know that, like, he's my son. We even look alike. Like, there's something about, like, this was meant to be, but even more looking like me. You know who he looks like? When God looks at him, he sees a little bit of Abba Father. And this isn't just Ben's story. This is my story, and this is your story as well. God saw you, God sees you, and he knows that you have this intrinsic value, this Imago Dei written on your heart. And he was willing to make sacrifices, years and years and decades of sacrifices, to step in front of your door and say, I want you to be my child. And I've already paid the price. I've already given over my own son to bring you into my family. And now God looks at you and says, will you call me Abba Father? You see, we've all been given the Imago Dei, and every single one of us have a unique opportunity to not only have his image on us, but to have our names changed and to have us be called the children of God.